So a bit of amusing news came out a couple days ago about the latest DCEU film, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of Nobody Really Cares. So this was apparently a direct request from Warner Brothers to a couple of major theater chains like AMC and Regal to change the title of the film, as they list it, to Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. Now this is funny for a couple reasons, chiefly because throughout the entire marketing campaign for this movie, Harley Quinn was always front and center anyway. It's not like people don't know that she's in it. She's obviously the only real draw to it, as most people probably aren't familiar with the actual Birds of Prey comic, or even the team itself, unless you count that TV series that they made a brief reference to in Crisis on Infinite Earths. But I don't think anyone even remembers that. But everyone was just calling it Birds of Prey for short anyway. And I think most people probably recognized it as, oh hey, that new Harley Quinn movie. The same Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad that I liked, if I'm a person who wants to go see Birds of Prey, most likely. So what this is likely a response to is the fact that over the weekend, the movie had a disappointing opening for them. It opened with just 33 million domestically, I believe, and worldwide currently, as of recording this, it sits at slightly over 80 million, and it had about an 84 million budget. So in all likelihood, it probably will make back most of its money, or all of its money, but it's definitely not the hit that they clearly wanted it to be. I mean, when you compare it to Joker, which had a $55 million budget, it had a $96 million opening, and as you probably know, made over $1 billion worldwide, all said and done, and was nominated for all the awards. By the way, Joaquin Phoenix took home basically all the Best Actor awards he could get, I think. And if you even want to compare it to Suicide Squad, that had a $133 million opening, $175 budget, and when all was said and done, after it was out of theaters, got about $750 million worldwide. So compared to past similar DC property films, really not doing that well. And if you want to compare this to another R-rated superhero film release in the month of February, Deadpool, which had a lower budget at $58 million, made $132 million in its domestic opening weekend, and had a final box office return of $782 million worldwide. And that just indicates that there's a general lack of audience interest despite all the feminist marketing that they had leading up to this. And that's also kind of funny because according to a survey from PostTrack, they calculated that the audience over the weekend opening was about 54% male, and 65% of those were over the age of 25. So, I mean, you can't even really say that, oh, this is all men's fault, men aren't turning out to see it, that's why it's doing so bad. I mean, apparently it's kind of even, men and women turning out to see it, it's just not a ton of them, because the movie doesn't look that interesting to most people. And for me personally, now this movie I was mostly going to let fly under my radar, because, I mean, all I needed was to see the first trailer and all of the character designs that came out of it. I always gauge my interest in movies by seeing how I respond to the trailers. To me, a trailer is how you sell a film. You want me to see it, then make a good trailer. But personally, what turns me off to it is the complete lack of comic accuracy. Not even just like an interpretation, like a distinct artistic variation on the comics. It seems to me more like let's just forget that and do something completely different, but also very reminiscent of Suicide Squad, which I am not a fan of, to say the least. But you look at all the character designs, and they just look awful to me. Harley Quinn, she doesn't have the red and black at all. She just looks somehow even more basic than the way she looked in Suicide Squad. You look at Black Canary, obviously looks nothing like any other interpretation of it, even vastly different from the Arrowverse versions, which, to their credit, look mostly like they should look. Of course, they don't have the fishnets, but hey, I'm still a huge fan of Katie Lotz's version, even if it doesn't technically have the canary cry. And you also look at Huntress. She looks nothing like any other version that I've seen of her. Not even the Arrowverse version, which I actually thought was fairly decent, and critically underused because she only appeared in, 2 episodes? The last one being called Birds of Prey, actually, where she has a little fight with Canary. And her costume design looked alright, too. But this one doesn't look like she has a mask, doesn't look like she has a cloak. What's she got? She got nothing. it just looks boring. It looks low quality. And I get that they're trying to go with a more, I guess, I don't know, street level version of the characters, but I mean, if you're gonna call it Birds of Prey, then you know, it ought to look something like what it's adapting. And then there's Cassandra Cain, who, I don't know, she's a much younger version of the Batgirl she was in the comics, but she clearly, as far as I can tell, takes very, very, very little from what her original version is depicted to be. So who exactly this is supposed to be appealing to is a mystery to me. And then you got this character of Black Mask, who's been in a few different versions of Batman media. The earliest I can remember seeing him was in the Batman series, The Batman, from 2004. And he was also in Batman Arkham Origins and Under the Red Hood, the animated movie. And, you know, usually he's portrayed to be the usual rough and tough kind of mobster guy. But in this movie, he's played kind of differently by Ewan McGregor. And he said in an interview, because he was asked this question, and I feel like he would only address this if he was asked, because, I mean, are you really going to say no in this type of a question? He was asked by an interviewer from Variety if he believed that the Black Mask and Victor Zsasz characters were gay, because of, apparently they have a close relationship in the film, and the character of Black Mask acts a bit flamboyant. Apparently acting flamboyant has to mean gay nowadays, but I don't know, I guess that's progressivism for you. So he was asked by this Muppet-sounding goober over here, or actually he sounds more like a bad impression of Louis Armstrong, but yeah, go ahead and check out how awkward it kind of is.
There was, you know, on the social media, on the internet, they wanted you guys to be more than just friends.
Yeah.
So are you guys gay in the movie?
It's very their relationships is very much based in, there's a want and a need in there for sure.
And there's like a real love of anarchy. And there's I think they
More than likely, yes.
Yes.
More than likely. You heard it here first. And they're like, Warner Brothers said we weren't supposed to say that.
So clearly, it's not a very serious question. I mean, as you can see, they're not going to say no to that. I mean, it kind of reminds me of that time when Donald Glover was asked if he thought that Lando was pansexual in this film because he apparently had some kind of close relationship to a robot. You know, he's not going to say no. Because if he says no, then you know what happens. Then they get accused of being, bigoted or anti-whatever. They're just going to say yes if the question's asked, and that's all that really is, at least in my opinion. So back to who this film really appeals to. Clearly, it's not going to please the major comic book fans or even people who have a passing familiarity with the comics, because it doesn't resemble them pretty much at all. The lump sum of Suicide Squad fans don't seem to be that interested in it, unless they were more of a vocal minority than we thought, which I don't think is true, but... And then you have these people who are all, yes, pro-feminism, more female-led films, this is great, we see females kicking ass, yes, what do you mean it's tanking? What do you mean no one likes this? This is the fault of men, I tell you! But that's not true, because you have Wonder Woman that did really well, you have Captain Marvel that did really well, although maybe could be argued that that's just because of Marvel's good track record and it was the lead-in to Endgame, but I digress. Wonder Woman 1984 looks amazing to me, I'm definitely going to see that. Black Widow looks pretty good. Bunch of people will probably see that. Again, because it's Marvel, but, you know. And at the same time, if you're pushing feminism, that means that you're trying to show that feminine qualities are just as important as masculine qualities, right? I mean, the whole thing is about equality, not superiority, technically. Or at least it's supposed to be. So why is it that when you see a movie in a similar genre that depicts violence, but it's a male main character, does the media jump and say that this is promoting toxic masculinity, and it's empowering basement-dwelling incels and all sorts of nonsensical things like that? That's just ultra-violent males, you know how they are, we gotta dial that down. And yet you have a movie, which is supposed to be ultra-violence as well, but just with females, and it's okay, and you should champion this. Does that make any sense? It seems like there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance here. But enough about my opinion. What do the people who have actually seen it think overall? So generally I like to discourage paying too much attention to aggregate review sites because the review scores can be super inflated or super deflated when they get mobbed by people who excessively love a film or excessively hate a film, or both at the same time, and then reviews start getting deleted and oh my gosh, what's going on? But over on Rotten Tomatoes, it currently sits at an 80% from both critics and audiences alike. That's a bit weird. Usually the numbers are drastically different. But you think, oh, 80% from everyone who's seen it? That must mean it's pretty good. This is a sleeper hit. Not so fast. Metacritic tells a slightly different story. And if you go on there, critics on average give it a score of 60, and audiences give it an average score of 5.8 or 58. So, again, the numbers seem to pretty much agree there, strangely. But they seem to say that the overall sentiment from people who've seen it is that it's kind of average, maybe a little slightly above, but not that much, just mostly average. So all that being said, I still don't care whether this movie does well or fails. I just don't like the whole Suicide Squad aesthetic. I definitely don't like that they continued it in this one. I'm glad that it seems that we're finally rid of the curse of the Jared Leto Joker. Except now he's a vampire, so there's that. But I think at the end of the day, the real takeaway here, and this applies to Terminator Dark Fate as well, is not that people aren't ready for a female-led franchise film or action film or really any kind of film. It's that if you make something which by all indications kind of seems like it's gonna stink, most people are probably gonna smell it.